here to participate in the management committee meeting. We'll do a call to order. We've got a quorum here. And we'll move right into approval of the September 28th management committee minutes. We've all gotten them in advance and had a chance to review them. Are there any changes, or otherwise I'm looking for a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Lilligren moves approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Muse. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. We'll now move on to our non-consent business items reports, and we've got our 2022-268 Enterprise Asset Management System Solution Professional Services Contract, 22P018, and we've got Ben Keenan, Asset Management Business Systems Manager.
And Craig Vance is
And of
going
course,
to
Craig.
support me with this as well.
Thank you. Welcome to both of you, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, council members. I appreciate your time today. I'm going to kick us off with some background, and I appreciate all your tolerance for these IT matters as of late. And as all good IT matters involve, I'm going to start talking about some acronyms, right? Doesn't everybody love an acronym? All right. So the first acronym I would like to talk about is paint a little background before Ben gets into the specifics of what we're trying to achieve today.
We'll do a call to order.
I have a little bit of echo there.
An iPad is talking.
Just take a couple seconds to sync up our lives here. All right, back
Thank
to
you
you.
so much.
Yep.
To start with this background, I just kind of want to start with the concept of ERP. I'm sure many of you from your professional backgrounds have run into this term before, but ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. And it's the integrated management of shared enterprise business processes mediated or kind of facilitated by technology, right? And so the key part of this concept is this notion of integrated management of shared business processes. So let me give you kind of an example of something that people might think of when they think about a ERP. They might think about finance or procurement or HR, right? And most organizations across divisions or whatnot would share common HR or procurement practices and processes. And most organizations facilitate that, HR or procurement business with some kind of technology platform to save money, simplify things, make them work more expeditiously. In asset-intensive or operations-intensive organizations, which certainly the council is, in addition to those kind of, administrative systems like HR and finance, operational systems are a really important part of our ERP strategy. Ben is one of our many luminaries in asset management or enterprise asset management, which is one of the key systems inside of the operational ERP portfolio. All right, so I'll give you an example of kind of operations and why operations ERP stuff is relevant. So let's imagine, say for instance, you're like a car rental company. You don't have a lot of strategic advantages if you think about it. Like everybody can buy the same cars, right? Those car rental companies are generally kind of at the same counter, right? So how do you become a really successful car rental company, right? You really become a successful car rental company by doing what everyone else does better, by managing your assets better, by turning those cars around, making sure they're operating more efficiently. And for those reasons, there's an overlap with our business, like the management of our assets is really critical, and technology can help differentiate us. So we require in our business both a strategy for ERP that applies to administrative systems like HR and finance, and one that applies to operational systems because of its criticality to our business. So I want to give you a little history about our ERP journey as an organization. It really starts in the late 90s and early 2000s. This is when you would see a lot of our peers also kind of embarking on their technology journeys, buying the first web-based systems. But we did not necessarily combine our processes at that period of time. So we embarked on the journey of the technology component, but our processes remained relatively siloed, especially across divisions. And so as an end result, we ended up in a place where we are today, which is we really have three major separate systems being used across different divisions. they're kind of glued together in a hodgepodge. And over the last 20 years, we've added a lot of ancillary systems onto it. I kind of think of it as like a Christmas tree that you only add more and more ornaments on. Anyway, and so at this point, we truly have dozens and dozens of kind of bolt-on additionals. So where are we in recent history, some 20 years later? Well, somewhat unlike most folks who might have thrown out that Christmas tree at some period of time, ours has stayed in the corner. And so 20 years later, we largely have the same technologies in place as we did before. And while we've matured in our processes, they're still largely divisionally specific, if that makes sense. Actually, we're at a point where many of our technologies are no longer made or supported. In some cases, we're actually the only people that I know of left on Earth running them. So there's some risk associated with that truth as well. We were going down a couple of years ago when I started a path of making incremental improvements to our respective processes in our divisions and updating those technologies, but not really changing the underlying paradigm that we had, kind of different silos of this business process. And I can say with the support of leadership, George being notable, Mary being a great supporter of this work, we took a real step back and rethought, this is the first time in 20 years we really considered this. And we feel the call to action on the technology front, but really process is the leader in this and the technology is the enabler, And so to those ends, we embarked on a new journey. And this is where I get to throw acronym number 3 at you. And then we call that BPSI. And it's just a made up council thing. And it stands for Business Process Systems Integration. And so BPSI has been described by some in the project as what I would call the finalization of the consolidation of the Met Council. And it puts at the forefront the idea of sharing processes across our divisions instead of doing it differently in different places. One procurement process, one set of asset management processes in our operational space. So that project that BPSI is really a program of projects. It's a bunch of separate projects that are all happening to support a common set of goals or outcomes. And today, we want to talk to you about what is arguably the cornerstone of that program, and that's enterprise asset management. And we have some information to share with you, which is what I would call an early but significant step in our journey. And to speak to that, I would rather turn it over to one of our business process leaders and a thought leader on enterprise asset management. So Ben, maybe you could tell us a little bit about this next steps.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name's Ben Keenan. As Craig has said, I'm the Business Systems Manager for the Asset Management Department within Environmental Services, but I have been the lead for this project over the last year to 18 months. What's this? What's happening there?
I think it popped up. They fixed it for you. You should be good now.
Okay, great. So the Enterprise Asset Management project. So currently, we utilise 2 main enterprise asset management or computerised maintenance management systems within the council, one within transit and one within environmental services. Both systems are no longer supported by their original manufacturers and are ageing pieces of software. So there was an imperative to look at what can we do to replace these pieces of software, but what it presented is an opportunity to look at asset management as a whole across the council and how can we develop a common goals for asset management under unified governance for the organisation. So what's up on the screen at the moment is just a bit of sort of the overall aims of the Enterprise Asset Management project. So we are looking to sort of develop a strategy and the requirements that will allow us to acquire and implement a comprehensive enterprise asset management solution. So it will support full asset lifecycle management and continuous process improvement, and will drive a more consistent, efficient, strategically focused asset management capability for the council, allowing us to derive better value from our assets. And that's the key point for asset management. The point of asset management is to make sure that we have the processes in place that we derive the value from the assets that we own and operate to actually deliver the services that we want to deliver to the region. So this is the first contract that we're looking to let in this project, and the project itself was broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 is really the getting ourselves ready as an organisation to implement a new technology solution. So in order to do that, we need to understand what the asset management system that we're going to utilise across the organisation is, how we're going to use it, what processes it's going to support, and ensure that it provides that true line of sight between the council's overall outcomes and how we operate, maintain, and utilise our assets on the front line. Phase 2 is then turning that into, or deriving our requirements for a new technology solution. Bear in mind, the technology solution is just the tool that helps us or supports us in achieving the aims of asset management. It's not the asset management system per se itself. Phase 2 is to develop the requirements and go out to solicitation for a product that will meet our needs and a vendor who will implement that to deliver the solution that we need. And phase 3 of the project is the implementation as well. And in terms of the strategy behind the project, what we are doing is we are looking to hire what we've termed an owner's agent, a term that we've taken from a construction business. So that's someone who's going to come in and help us with that upfront work in phase 1, but also support us as our agent throughout the rest of the project, ensuring that when we purchase the system and when we implement the system, it's going to deliver to the aims that we have set for ourselves at the start of the project. And for that reason, the vendor that we are looking for through this contract will not be allowed to bid on the second contract within the project, which will be for the purchase and implementation. They will be a completely independent vendor that will represent our interests throughout the project to make sure that we derive the goals that we want. So just diving into, so the RFP was issued in April of this year. We did receive 9 proposals, 9 quite detailed proposals, and a selection committee selected the firm AMCL as the firm that could best deliver the outcomes that we wanted for this project. We then interviewed that company. We went round the circle a little bit with the scope to refine that a few times, and ultimately we got a final cost on September of this year. So that selection committee or consensus committee has agreed that AMCL is still the organisation that is going to provide us with the best value and the best chance of delivering the project. So that is the firm that we are recommending for that contract. So I've just got up there some of the key points behind the reasons why we went for AMCL, but really AMCL are an asset management expert company with worldwide footprint and strong representation in North America, having worked with private and public agencies across North America and across all the industry areas in which the council operates. So they work with a lot of transit organisations, they work with utilities, including water and wastewater, and the housing and real estate areas as well. So they've got a strong background in all those areas. And really, they were the organisation that was able to best articulate a clear strategy that really focused on our end goal. It wasn't focused on delivering us a technology solution, but it was focused on actually delivering us that ability to maintain that line of sight between the frontline workers and the organisation's goals through a system that is going to support those goals for us. So Thrive Lens analysis. So these are the I think how the EAM project as a whole is going to support the Thrive outcomes. But really, if we don't get this first part of the project right and get the right partner on board to support us with this project, then our chances of meeting these goals are greatly reduced. So I think AMCL, the selection committee or panel really felt that they would really give us the best chance of realising these goals. So the ask of the management committee is that that they recommend that the Metropolitan Council authorise the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 22P018 with Turner Townsend AMCL Inc. for development and support of a strategy to purchase and implement a council-wide enterprise asset management solution in an amount not to exceed $2.3 million.
Great, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that. Are there any questions from the committee? Any thoughts or questions? Councilmember Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to thank you for your leadership and thank George for his leadership. It's important that we keep our systems streamlined and efficient. And I think that'll keep our systems in good working order, but also help keep fresh, good talent in our workforce too.
Thank you. Anything else? Councilmember Pacheco?
Chair, members, this is probably, maybe you already discussed this when I wasn't here, but in the administrative kind of side of it, have you looked at how we will engage our projects, processes, and the impact on equity? Because it seems to me, I go to a number of meetings and everyone has their own metric that they're trying to hit, and where I don't see it as across the system. Is that something that would play out with this new system?
I think that's an excellent opportunity. So we're in, as I think exampled by this particular contract, we're in what I would say is an early phase of designing common processes across the council and then bringing in technology to support those new common processes. And I think that's absolutely something we should look at whenever we make changes to the way we do business. And so I believe that should be a component of the program. We're a little early. We have not begun the actual process design phase now. And I will just say that this proposal, OEO did set a goal, I believe, on this proposal or for this procurement, and that this vendor is exceeding that goal.
Yes, it is 14%, and they come in just above a 15% with the MCAP goal at the moment.
That's great. Good question,
Yes, Madam
Councilmember
Chair.
Pacheco.
I guess to follow up on that, that's when what we see is a lot of numbers, and people seem to be doing a great job. It's a good outfit here. But there's other processes that could be improved, or there's other impacts that we can create without looking just at the goal of reaching number 10 or 20 or whatever it is. And so as you start looking at this system, that's important as well.
I couldn't agree more. And in the broader BPSI program, which includes, as you alluded to, administrative in things and operational in things, one of the themes across many of the projects is better data and reporting, right? Which is how I think we can set and measure goals much more effectively. And I know, for instance, procurement's a particular focus. There's a lot of opportunity to give more strategic information to procurement processes and to understand goal setting and our success in that space.
Great questions. Anything else? I would just add, I'm really excited about this. I went through some of this at the City of Plymouth. We had all kinds of different systems, and the police department was doing their thing, and accounting was doing their thing, and the water infrastructure folks were doing their thing, and it was painful. And I remember painful in a way where change happened, so we all know that's painful for people typically, but the end results were that we were much more efficient. We could understand how everything interconnected with one another, and decisions were made more cross systems rather than in silos. So it was a long process and we made investments, but it became a point in time for us and here now at the council where, yes, we couldn't buy parts for things, and nobody would service the thing or the software or the hardware in many cases, and that becomes a risk, and a lot of that involves safety for our own employees and for the people that we're serving. So I think this is long overdue but very well timed, because I think every time there's a generation of people or we go through some crisis, it gives people that almost permission to really start to rethink how we're doing things. And I want to thank you for your leadership, George. I want to thank you for yours because I know you've been pushing this. I'm glad it's exceeding our MCUB goals. And I really know that this is a process, but we can find out where we can be more efficient, whether that be with time, savings, or money, financial savings, or people's own capacity and time as talent here at the council. So I think that's great. What I really want to get across, at least in my time here at the council, is I want to make sure that this is sustainable and that this now becomes embedded in a process as we look to the future. Doing this every 20 years isn't the way to do it, or incrementally 5 years here, 6 years there. This has to be part of who we are in our DNA. So we don't want to, fall behind, because every day we're barely keeping up with the way the world is changing and how we integrate with other agencies as well when new rules or systems are coming at us. So I really commend you for helping lead this, all the directors. Hopefully everybody is excited about this like I am and embraces it, and we keep this as not just a moment in time when a budget rolls around, but we build this into a system with leadership to keep an eye on this throughout the council. So I just want to thank you for your work on this. With that, we have the staff is requesting that the Met Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute contract 22P018 with Turner and Townsend AMCL for the development and support of strategy to purchase and implement a council-wide enterprise asset management solution in an amount not to exceed $2.3 million. Do I have a motion to that request?
So moved.
Moved by Pacheco. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lilligren. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Thanks, and I was just
Councilmember
doing some
Lilligren.
thank you, just doing some cross-referencing. Thanks for this. I was part of government starting in 2001 when you saw that sort of siloed investment in technology. I think we always kind of knew this day would come, and I agree with you, Madam Chair, it's not something you do halves. So thank you for moving in this direction. I just have a question about our own internal policies and procedures, and so this may be for you, George Moore, but correct me if I'm wrong. So I thought we took an action where the council didn't need to act. We changed the policy on contracts less than $10 million, and so this is a $2.3 million contract under that procurement of goods, services, and real estate policy. So I'm just wondering why we're seeing this, since we said we didn't need to anymore.
Madam Chair, council members, great question. I think this is really a critical part of changing the organization and where we're gonna go. I thought, yes, you're right, it's less than 10, but it's really critical for the council members and us to hear how are we approaching our processes as we move forward. And I think this is a very, like Craig said, a very small but an incredibly important step, reviewing the processes across the way. And it's a significant amount of dollars that is gonna come in the future, especially as we select a system that's gonna help us across the council. So I just thought it was really important for you all to hear where we were going and all the work that Ben and his team has done. And really, quite frankly, to give thanks to the BPSI team. This is a really good team that was put together, and they really have put a lot of thought into this. So this is one of the reasons why. So,
Thank you for that, George, and great question. Yeah, and Jody?
Yeah, Madam Chair, council member, the policy change that was enacted increased the level for construction and design build. The expenditures policy did not change for professional services and technical services. Contracts of a value greater than $500,000 still need to be approved by the council.
Thank you. And so, ma'am, just to clarify, I just like to understand, that we're in compliance with the old policy.
That's good.
So this is all FM 14-2, right? It's all procurement of goods, services, and real estate. So somewhere within that policy, it makes that differentiation of what you just talked about, that it's design, build, and capital budget.
Yeah, Madam Chair, council member, I can see how there may have been some confusion because this is called an owner's agent contract. Typically, that's a term that we've used historically with design build, which construction is part of it, but this specific contract is for professional services where we're hiring a consulting firm to come in and really help us sort through what our needs are for inventory and then stay on through the implementation as we migrate to a new system, which there's so much excitement around process and efficiencies and having better data to help.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anything else? And I'll just add this. I mean, I'm so excited about this, and it's a process, right? We've got a time where we have to have somebody analyze all of this, our vendor. And if only there could be a ribbon cutting the day we start to, because these, we ribbon cut and we celebrate all these things that you can see these assets that we hold, but the things that manage it all is really, I think, so important to how we show up and operate as a council across the council. So thanks for this. All right, seeing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. So go forth.
Thank you.
And integrate. All right, the next item we have up under non-consent business is 2022-267. It's the same week item. It's a memorandum of understanding between the Metropolitan Council and the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU Local 1005. We'll bring up Marcy Cordes, who is our Chief Labor Relations Officer. Welcome, Marcy. Great to see you today.
Thank you. Yes, Marcy Cordes, Chief Labor Relations Officer, Madam Chair and committee members. On October 1st, we reached a memorandum of understanding with ATU for a series of contract adjustments to the existing labor agreement. These are compensation adjustments as well as compensation structure adjustments and language changes. I'll give a brief summary. This deal also was recently ratified Monday evening, October 10th, by the ATU bargaining unit. The highlights of the MOU include a 5% general wage increase to all members of the bargaining unit, modification of the bus and train operator wage progression. We're going to be creating a new entry rate of $26.16 an hour, and this will be a significant improvement over our current entry rate of $21.80 an hour. We also, as part of the agreement, will be providing a one-time lump sum payment to all members of the union. These payments will range from $500 to $2,000 per person, depending on your job class. We've also made modifications to contract language on train operator hiring. These modifications are going to allow Metro Transit to recruit train operator candidates outside of the bus operator job group, which is the restriction that we have in the contract now. We're going to be able to open this job up to outside candidates as well as other employees of Metro Transit and the Met Council, so we're excited about that new hiring opportunity as well. I should note we did enhance our hiring bonus as part of this, and employees who have CDLs can get up to $5,000 as a hiring bonus, and we did also increase the employee referral bonus to $3,000, and we're hoping that is another element of this total settlement that will help us to get additional or more operator candidates. The Thrive Lens analysis as a settlement that falls within the financial parameters established by the Council for managing labor agreements. This agreement demonstrates efficient and effective management, we believe, of our public resources. Also under the lens of prosperity, the agreement represents a fair and reasonable settlement and demonstrates the Council's commitment to investing in our employees. And again, the funding was negotiated within the parameters that were established by this committee in September. Our request today that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1005.
Great. Are there any questions? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment. Number one, I really want to thank Marcy and her team This is a very, very important thing, not only critical to our current operators, but we do have a significant operator shortage. We have representatives from Metro Transit here who are, eagerly anticipating all of this happening because we know that we're somewhat at a disadvantage until we take this action. And so this is a really, really big deal. And I know it's been a very long drawn out effort, so sincerely, thank you.
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I just would like to acknowledge that we had a great team with both transit leadership as well as members of our HR staff. And really, we had a lot of support throughout the whole process, so we appreciate that very much as well.
Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah,
Councilmember
Madam Chair,
Lilligren?
yeah, thanks, Mr. I just want to add my thanks as well to you, the whole team, everyone. I mean, there were challenges getting to this agreement, and I think that with the changes in our ecosystem during the time of this negotiation, I feel like you and the team were really flexible and responded in a way that of course sets us up for success in the future. And I want to comment, I really appreciate the way that you engage this committee throughout the process, and these kinds of negotiations often have some political, roiling or dynamic that are involved, and so I think it's important to keep the policymakers involved and engaged in setting these strategies, and I think you just did a great job, so thank you.
I would second that as well. Anything else? And I'll just add my thanks, Marcy, to you and the team. Really appreciate your hard work on this. Again, appreciate this committee's work to stay in touch with the team as they needed us to be there for them. And again, just seconding everything that's been said. And I will just thank the ATU members too for ratifying this memorandum of understanding. We want to make sure that our employees are well cared for, and I believe this is a great step moving in that direction. And just to be sure too, I want to make sure that hiring bonus up to $5,000 for CDL licensees that are hired, that's part of this, as well as the up to $3,000 for referral bonuses, right?
Yeah, Madam Chair, committee members, we did incorporate that into the overall MOU. It was just convenient to add it as we were having these discussions. The hiring bonus is $3,000 if you do not have a CDL, and we do have the ability to add other hiring bonuses for other job classes, as essentially Metro Transit, Brian, and Human Resources deemed necessary. So we think that's a real added benefit as well.
Great, I think so too. Councilmember Musse.
Thank you. So I just want to add my voice and thank you and your team. Just want to highlight one thing. I think it will be super helpful. Really offer advertising hiring bonuses, especially in many different languages, so we can target more communities of color who are really be willing to apply to these jobs.
Good point, thank you. Anything else? All right then, looking for a motion that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Amalgamated Transit Union, ETU Local 1005 as presented.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Moved by Barber. Seconded by Musse. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. So thank you very much, Marcy. Great work.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I'm sure just a process question. So is this committee the authority, the final authority on this?
It goes to the council, right?
This evening.
Oh, great. Oh, that's right. You said same day. So.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's okay.
Okay.
We have a lot going on. Thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So that finishes up our non-consent business items, and we'll move on to information. And we've got one item, it's the COVID update lessons learned, and Phil is here, or who is here? No? Okay. Kathy Matter, Manager of Business and Continuity Programs. So Kathy, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Nice address. Nice one. I'm Kathy Matter. I am the Business Continuity Program Manager here at the Met Council. I have just my talking point summary here of everything I'm going to go through today. This information, compilation of information, is really conducted from the perspective of our incident command throughout the COVID crisis and their managers and leaders who directed this for over 2 years with the Met Council and to some extent even into today. I report to Phil Walljasper, the Enterprise Risk Officer, who in turn reports to Mr. Gonzalez. sitting up in the front of the room. Business continuity here at the Met Council is enterprise-focused work. It involves all Met Council divisions. And really what we deal with as a group is managing this program, risk management in terms of identifying services, critical services, and the needs of those services. We align our work with state and federal statutory requirements and regulations, and also help the organization identify risk management strategies where appropriate, and then the individual divisions and work units are responsible for implementing those recovery strategies. Also in our bucket of work is pandemic planning. And we had done a lot of work in advance of the pandemic. This program has existed for over 10 years at the Met Council, and we had a real solid foundation in place as the pandemic loomed in Minnesota. So the pandemic plan, like the rest of the program, is enterprise focused. It's a single plan with the organization that utilizes the National Incident Management System. We are mandated by governor's executive orders to follow the NIMS, to use the NIMS ICS process and methodology in our response. We have other parts of the organization. Metro Transit is so fluent in NIMS, and they've really operationalized it in their day-to-day services. So it was here, and we just put a spin on it for responding to and managing the COVID crisis for the Met Council. Purpose of incident command in the pandemic plan, or in any Met Council plan is to lead and guide and make crisis management decisions for the organization. They did a fabulous job. This is just a high-level visual of the NIMS ICS structure at the Met Council. No names associated with it because all of our work is protected under Minnesota Statute 1337 as security data for really it documents how we would respond to and manage any crisis, not just the pandemic crisis. But this is the high level, and if anyone has questions following this, I'm available to answer those questions. At the beginning, this is a timeline at the very beginning when we were hearing on the news that a pandemic was here really, or was coming. And it happened really, really fast in the big scheme of things. On March 6th here in Minnesota, we had our first confirmed COVID case. On March 12th, we as an organization declared an emergency that's really rooted in procurement's emergency declaration process, and really enabled us as an organization to respond quickly, especially for procuring things we needed to get immediately. The state of Minnesota, the governor issued his executive order the following day, and 2 weeks later, we were out of here. All of the on-site office staff who no longer needed to or were deemed not requiring to work in an office were sent home to work remotely, and also from that point in time went just headlong into immediately taking steps to mitigate risk to all of our employees who couldn't leave, who had to stay and work on premises all day, every day. In our pandemic plan activation, our initial pandemic incident commander was Mary Bogie, and about mid-pandemic, she passed that baton to Phil Waljasper. When those meetings commenced, initially we were meeting sometimes twice a day. And throughout the duration of the pandemic, it slowly downshifted, to once a day, and then 3 times a week and 2 times a week, and just shifted over the duration of the pandemic. There were many, besides the incident commanders, briefings during the pandemic, and those regular recurring meetings. There was a lot of off-group meetings going on as well too. So the finance chief and her team met on a regular basis, and I'll talk about this later, but they continue to meet to this day because they were such valuable meetings. Logistics chief, Ms. Jacoby sitting in here, and her team. You know, it was just every group within our incident command was drinking from a fire hose, really, and just figuring out their unique responsibilities and obligations to this organization, specific to COVID and its demands on us. We also plugged into the state of Minnesota's emergency activation of state agencies. We attended the recurring state emergency operation briefings, which was command at one level above us. This was really what was called a unified command situation, where there was a hierarchy of command, and every entity was managing it from their perspective. And we were also plugged into Minnesota management and budget for a lot of kind of contextual, especially human resources information for us as an organization. Highlights for us as an organization, we immediately initiated the work of getting the supplies that we needed, not just for our online frontline essential workers, but also for our customers. You know, we implemented major changes to cleaning our buses and operating our buses for the operators, for our employees, and for the citizens who are still using our bus system and our train system all day, every day. We immediately and almost seamlessly transitioned an office-based workforce to working remotely from home. There were a couple of bumps in the road, but in the big scheme of things, really, really minor. We surprised ourselves, I think. We surprised a lot of people. We made our employees at the beginning and for the duration of the pandemic, we made them our top priority, talking to them, communicating with them, appreciating them. It was just a huge focus of our entire organization for the leadership. We leveraged and nurtured critical relationships, and that wasn't just from an RA, business continuity, crisis response situation. So many people, our HRA people, communicating with their HRA partners, Jody talking constantly with administration, and I mean, everyone was leveraging to the benefit of this organization their professional relationships and connections to navigate this crisis. And then my last point here, we mastered the art of the pivot. It was a word that was used a lot during the incident commanders briefings, and the one constant this entire pandemic was that things changed constantly. Just you get one thing accomplished because something had changed, and then it would change again. And that was true for everyone. Everyone. It was just, you get things figured out, and everyone spun on the dime all the time, constantly. When we were nearing the end of this, we started talking about lessons learned and wanting to gather that information. We ended up doing that via in-person, one-on-one interviews. Some people brought their team to the table. I conducted over 35 interviews, hour to hour and a half each. Some people got multiple interviews. One person in this room had 3 interviews with me. And we just, the one thing I noticed when I was meeting with people is everybody talked. Everybody they just talked. They appreciated each other. They vented on frustrations, and just really answered every single question that we had, honestly, completely, from their heart. And it was really eye-opening. We gathered a lot of information, high-level lessons that we learned. And I referenced this before, we were more ready and more prepared than we even realized. We had done that foundational work. we hadn't really ever activated it, used it in practice. It was theoretical. It was, this is what we're gonna do. And then we did it in the crunch. We went immediately into ICS mode. Meredith and Mary both led that happening. And we hadn't really had an opportunity to practice it. In 2019, we had a huge training initiative and education program, my program, Business Continuity, where we led everyone and trained and educated them in their NIMS ICS roles. And then bam, we were using it in 2020 before we had a chance to stand up tabletop exercises. We immediately began the work of procuring critical supplies. And I'll reference it again, but we actually had stockpiles of supplies taken away from us during the pandemic because they were in such short supply statewide. And so it was a nod to emergency preparedness that had been done by this organization prior to this happening, that we were able to meet that need on a statewide level. We analyzed constantly. We knew what the immediate situation was, and then we just adjusted, improvised, adapted, and overcome. So that was a phrase I learned early on when I was doing this work here, and we adopted it and made it our own. We identified service gaps in this region immediately, MTS, and stepped forward to plug those gaps and meet those needs in the organization. Grocery deliveries, getting healthcare workers to hospitals and long-term care facilities. And then another huge thing we did at the beginning and throughout the pandemic was leveraged existing technologies and data analysis to benefit us as an organization, but to benefit this region as an organization as well. Environmental services, working with the U of M to develop a way to test for the presence of COVID in wastewater. So just constantly, we were on the go, responding to this for ourselves and for this region. We learned that our Met Council leaders were a coveted asset by the state of Minnesota, and we lost some of them for extended periods of time. That helped us, it helped the state. We learned that our and I referenced this before, that our advanced crisis preparations and emergency stockpiling of supplies could be and were conscripted by the state. The state has that ability to do that, and that's just good to know for this time and for the next time, so that we can plan for that. We learned that we could respond to and manage multiple crises at one time. We had the COVID, we had various periods of civil unrest during COVID, and we just continued to knock it out of the park as an organization. We learned that we need to fine-tune processes around our incident command, decision-making, and follow-up communications. That was a pain point mentioned many times, and part of it was rooted in our day-to-day operations. In silos were mentioned earlier, but we have very distinct different divisions. And the pandemic plan was managing from on high at an enterprise level. It wasn't something we were really used to as an organization. And so we've identified some ways to become more nimble in that space, and just kind of hopefully ease that pain point for our organizations, our divisions. We learned that linking our response to the state of Minnesota's response provided us with necessary insight and guidance, particularly from an HR perspective. But there were multiple situations where it did slow us down at the division level and made us less nimble at points in time. So kind of a yin and yang for this organization, just taking the good with the bad or the bad with the good. But it is our reality. We are part of the state of Minnesota, and we've identified that as a pain point, and we learned how to work with that. Leaders learned how to work with it, and we learned how to work with it as an organization. We learned that the extreme duration of the pandemic was a pain point for everyone. 2 full years for us, from our emergency declaration to standing down incident command and that emergency declaration. It was what it was. I mean, that was a thing, again, where we linked ourselves to the state of Minnesota. And if there is a next time, it's something we'll have to deal with in the moment. But in the moment, it was tough for some divisions to deal with. We learned that pain points in our pre-COVID life became exponentially more painful during COVID. Crisis management, and that's kind of a nod to the first business item today and talking about multiple different systems, you know, and just how that complicates things for us day-to-day operationally, and then in COVID that complicated things, you know, but they're things we know about and they're things we're dealing with in the moment. So if we ever experience this again in our lifetime, and in our professional lives, hopefully we will be positioned to be more resilient in those spaces. And then we learned that practices and processes developed during COVID were really good processes, particularly in the finance space. And a lot of those meetings continue to this day, even though we've now stood down our response and management of COVID. We learned that we made a difference. We made a huge difference regionally, statewide, and nationally. Community development, their HRA group developed a virtual inspection process for landlords that was adopted and used nationwide by other HRA organizations. And they also spent a lot of time focusing on helping their clients navigate their HRA system, and just really empowered them and taught them that they could be nimble and responsive themselves within that system. And that was 2 big, huge things that they changed nationally and regionally for their client base. Environmental services, I referenced this before, the research and development collaboration with the U of M, which also resulted in a process to identify COVID and wastewater, which was adopted and used nationally. And then the other point that was made in those interviews with those people is that there are myriad future opportunities for taking this type of data and using it in other ways to benefit this state and the United States. MTS, unplanned, improvised, in the moment, stood up brand new services, the grocery delivery services and connecting clients with grocery stores, and then the healthcare workers, as I said, getting them to work safely to continue those services for the region. Metro Transit's collaboration with the Department of Health and Blue Cross Blue Shield to stand up, retrofit the vaccination buses. And those buses deployed statewide. They weren't just in this region. They were throughout the state of Minnesota serving, providing that service to the state. And then Metro Transit, just as an organization, completed 99% of their scheduled services every single day of the pandemic. One of the things they mentioned in their interviews to me was this just kind of this, not a disconnect, but this kind of conflict between social distancing and please don't ride the bus, but there were people who needed to ride the bus and the trains. You know, that service could not go away, and then just walking that fine line of providing the service protecting their employees and protecting their customers at the same time. At the end of the pandemic, we stood down our incident command and our emergency activation in March of 2022. And then the work of identifying these lessons learned at the high level, I'm talking leadership here, but also operationally, my employee and I are working with business units with their individual continuity of operations plans to identify COVID lessons learned that will go into a pandemic supplement for those individual continuity of operations plans. So they're going deep down into the organization just to capture those lessons learned for when and if it happens again. And then we transitioned our biggest residual COVID issue or tail, which is really figuring out what's our new normal look like today and in the future for us as an organization. This is one of the quotes, it was my favorite quote that came out of my interviews, and they said, I've said it before and I'll say it again, this was one of the best cross-divisional functional coordination efforts we've ever had here. And I've done a bunch of them. And that was, I don't know, that made me smile because at the root of it was all of the foundational work we did at the years preceding COVID.
Amazing. Thank you for this presentation. Very comprehensive. George, did you want to add something?
I do, Madam Chair, committee members. Just after this presentation was put together, and thank you very much, Kathy, you did a great job. Our team here, our IT team, just won the Governor's, the 2022 Governor's Geopalacio Commendation Award for developing the app, which is MN COVID-19 testing and vaccine finder. So I think that was really, really cool.
There was a lot of us.
Wow.
You didn't know that?
I used it all the time. Wow.
That there was a lot of us embedded in things.
I think that was really
People
cool.
know that.
So anyway, Craig, thanks for mentioning that. But that was, it's not in the presentation because that just happened. So that was really cool. So congratulations to the team.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I remember a few years ago, and I think this was not under this council, but we did a review of the continuity of operations plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking at the time that I couldn't imagine a scenario that would trigger all of that. And to see something that is literally, it's a plan on a shelf to come to life so quickly, really is a testament to all of our leadership. I mean, it was within days that everything stood up. I mean, it was kind of inspiring. At the same time, where some of our leadership was working in other areas of the administration, and to have all of that happening, to me, it's like now we're all having sort of the flashbacks over what happened the last 2 years and trying to remember all that. But it's really kind of just amazing what actually we did as an organization, and what all of you in stepping up into those roles. To me, it's still just staggering, and could not be more impressed. So like you do in these look backs now, so is there plans to actually go back and update the overall?
Oh, absolutely. That work had long since started, and yes, absolutely. We actually have over 90 continuity of operations plans at the Met Council. The pandemic plan is one of those plans. So yes, that work, there's work been done already, and the work will continue for a while. Yes, yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for all the leadership.
Thank you.
Great points. Anybody else? Councilmember Lilligren?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Ms. Mayor, thanks for the report and all the work. And I know it wasn't just you, but
Yes.
take some credit here, so good. And yeah, I have a couple of questions. And early on in your presentation, I thought you said you had just done a planning exercise, but you hadn't had the opportunity to tabletop that or to put in any.
We did a huge NIMS ICS education, so role-specific education for everyone. So for example, everyone's serving in an incident commander role in a Met Council command plan. So the pandemic plan is an enterprise-oriented plan, and we have one incident commander with backups, but environmental services has their own MCES command plan in the event there's a crisis that only impacts them. Metro Transit has a command plan, so we have 6 command plans total. So we had done role-specific NIMS ICS training, anywhere from 3.5 to 5 hours training sessions. My employee and I developed the curriculum and delivered that curriculum. It was a huge project for us in 2019.
So it was very fresh when the pandemic.
It was fresh, and then I did Finance Chief 101, Finance Chief for Dummies. When the pandemic hit, that first 2 weeks, I was refreshing the role and responsibilities information for everyone serving in those roles. They didn't have 4.5 hours to spare for a big class.
Oh, cool, and great, thank you. And my point was just how important that is to be fresh in that kind of training, so it doesn't seem unusual. Tabletopping is great. Early in my Minneapolis City Council career, we experienced intensive training in NIMS and ICS that really paid off.
Right.
But then I could see during the pandemic and during the civil unrest, at least from where I sat outside of City Hall, I couldn't see that had really been robustly maintained and that the city suffered for it.
Right.
So good on us, good on you for doing that. And I know we talked about when and if, or I think you said if it happens again in our lifetime, but I think in these days we just have to say when this happens again. And so again, good on you, good on the council. I have just a question, and this might be more for George, or it may not even be answerable in this room. Maybe council or someone that needs to answer it, but I'm really interested in the sequencing of the different actions that were taken at different jurisdictions of government. And so we passed our emergency declaration or whatever it was. The day before, the governor made a declaration or executive order. And so I'm just wondering, we're a unit of the, state government of the executive role, and I'm just wondering what the sequencing of that, there's any significance to the sequencing of that?
So I'll take it and then you can add if I get it wrong, and you can add if I get it wrong, Jody. So our emergency declaration, as I referenced when I spoke earlier, it's rooted in the procurement policy. And our emergency declaration is really designed to set our divisions free from procurement shackles, requirements, rules, regulations, and just it's designed to let our divisions be nimble in the moment from a procurement perspective, right? And so the governor's executive order, basically declaring a peacetime emergency for the state of Minnesota, that is different than our emergency declaration, right?
Jody, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilmember, I'll just add that the governor's executive order then just really gave the procurement and the council an opportunity to get those really scarce resources quickly to ensure that continuity of operations continued. And so what it did during that period of time was it exempted the procurement process.
True.
Again, only for pandemic-related supplies. And as feasible, we were collecting, the purchasing agents were collecting quotes and negotiating with multiple suppliers. So state law does allow the council, like other government agencies, to have emergency declaration powers, and we've done it with pipe bursts for ES and for transit, different situations, but the governor's specific declaration and executive order allowed us to mobilize quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah, great points. I was thinking about some of that as well.
I don't know.
Councilmember-
Oh, I'm sorry, I just saw that,
You go,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't know, George, were you
Yeah.
gonna say something? You look like you were about to.
I was, but just even beyond that, we're not a state agency as well. So it gives us a little bit of different authority as well, just when it comes to.
Thanks, and if you don't mind, Councilman, I have another question I want to make a comment too, and this has to do with the mobile vaccine clinics. And that's I didn't know about that, and so that was a great way of supporting the rest of the state and us really stepping up. And so I was looking at the wrap and the photo, and I was trying to see if there was any Met Council identification, Metro Transit, if any sort of of our branding made it onto the wrap, because we can always use things that improve our reputation statewide. And so was that acknowledged, or how was that acknowledged?
Brian, do you know the answer to that question?
Thanks, Brian.
So, yeah, council member and committee, what we did in this case is that our employees, our operators and supervisory staff were the ones who, transported the vehicle,
Sure.
helped with the on-site logistics, and so we used that opportunity to gently remind everyone that, we were part of that team and integral, and, aside from that, we said, hey, we're in it with Blue Cross, with the state, your wrap looks great, let's put it on our bus and we'll go from there, so. But they were fantastic partners, and in fact, Department of Health actually recognized this partnership with a Commissioner's Award at the end of 2021. So,
Thank you, Brian. I think that's a great story, and one that I think, would help improve sort of Met Council and Met Transit standing statewide. So just the next time it happens, so look for those opportunities. This is really contributing to a statewide effort. So thank you. And then I love, Ms. Metter, that you used the term nimble and responsive quite a bit. I think few people think of large government units, bureaucracies as being those things. And so it's really showing us what we can do. I love the way that we're leveraging that into ongoing improvements. And I run a tiny nonprofit, but the impacts on my small workforce, and we're not dissimilar, scaled down to what we were experiencing here. And we learned a lot of how to improve the way that we do business. So it's great to see it happening, scaled up in such a big way. And so I just want to commend you again, the whole organization, for using this opportunity. And I think that nimble and responsive are great words to describe our work, whether we're in an emergency period or it's business as usual. So,
Yep, thank you.
Great points, great points. And I would say too, I think there were people stuck on a cruise ship from Minnesota at the very beginning of this that needed to get home, and it was Metro Transit that buses and drivers that brought them. So we were on the front lines getting people that were trying to get home in the middle of the pandemic, and I don't know how they were testing or not, but we got them home and they were from not just the metro area. So these are the things that I think are the stories embedded in your presentation and throughout the council that we should be able to celebrate much more widely, whether it be on an almanac or something, looking back, all of that, because, there are just some ideas about the Met Council and what we do and what we don't do, but I just don't think people appreciate, the impact we had statewide.
Right.
So, Councilmember Lee, you had a
Yeah, I think Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to echo, I know there were all hands on deck, because I know being on the audit committee, Matt Latour was plugged into the system too. And so thanks to all the great work of all the staff. A couple of years ago, I worked for the St. Paul mayor, and one weekend the public works director was on vacation. He was at a cabin somewhere, and the St. Paul water main broke and flooded the street, caused a sinkhole, and neither the police or the mayor could get a hold of the public works director, and so that was a scandal. And then we learned for that, and we made a whole chain of command thing. And so I imagine, this is 10,000 times worse, and we survived, a water main break every day, and thanks to all the hard work of all staff that we've all survived, and we are where we are now because of you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is very brief. How our communication department is really trying to tell this story, because this is really impressive story to tell.
Thank you.
And most of the public here, they see us as a maybe very slow entity, but they're doing so much amazing work. So I would highly recommend that our committee team be able to work and pitch those stories to anyone who can plan, and even to the community, so they know the role that we played during the most difficult time of our state.
I couldn't agree more, and I would say I hope we get a chance to tell our story at the legislature, because they probably too will have a mindset with a fresh group of people over there to say, all right, maybe there's a committee over there that will look at all this, what worked and what didn't work, but we had a significant role in that, and I'd like them to more fully understand, especially with a lot of new people over there, what our value is to the state of Minnesota in addition to the region.
Thank you.
I mean, I agree with you, Councilmember Lee, former audit chair here. I was just impressed with all of those different roles, those commanding roles that had to be assumed while they had to keep all the rest of their duties going. And I was also really impressed because of these emergency orders and declarations, and things were shifting quickly to make sure we could do our daily operations, continuity of operations. And yet we still have to account for that with the federal government, with the state government, within our partners here, within our audit systems. All that's gotta be bundled up and managed for. It can't just be spit it out and see where it lands. You've gotta track everything, right? So I don't know, I just know from this group and the council in general, we have such admiration for everybody across the council who jumped right in. And yeah, telling the story would be so important, because it's really, I don't even know the number of people that we literally supported, touched, helped across the state of Minnesota, but it's massive.
Right. It is.
All right, any last comments? All right, great, thanks for this wonderful presentation. I actually hope the full council could get it at some point in time. I think it'd be very valuable for them at a council of the whole or something like that, and maybe more things could be added to it as we move along, because it never ends, right?
Exactly.
I'd agree,
Councilmember
Madam
Martin.
Chair, just to refer Councilmember Lilligren's comments of, I didn't know this, or, you know,
Yeah, I didn't.
like, I think that so much was happening so fast that, you know, if you were on different committees or chairs of different committee, you've heard certain things. But like, so I know all, like, the transit stuff and transportation stuff, but maybe not everybody knew that, and we didn't have a chance to chit chat across the table, right?
Yeah,
You know, so that'd be a good idea, I think.
I think if at some point, George, or we can.
It's already on the page.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We chatted about this in our prep
No,
meeting,
you have to
so.
tell me once.
Yeah, well, anyway,
I also want to say, Madam Chair, and,
yes,
you know, a very notable thing that we don't think about, but it's obviously very important. There was not a single, to my knowledge, and this is what I was shared by Marie, not a single paycheck was missed during the whole time.
well, that's good.
So that's good.
That's very good. And those things can
A
happen.
good call out.
I think we should offer tell this story.
Very
If we hire a PR firm that can, if we don't have to go back to the internal,
There we go.
we have to tell the story.
There we go. All right then, seeing no other business to come before this body, meeting adjourned. That's okay.